the information that are given there much faster, so that I don't spend too much time on like certain question, as well as that I don't do some mistakes that are not really necessary.
That's right, Sasha. So you're talking about speed and getting used to the questions.
It's getting used to the questions, and as well be very highly concentrated throughout the test, so that you don't do some silly mistakes and lose points for really there where it's not necessary.
Yeah, that's right. But what I would like to say is that you got 14 on this test, and the break-even point, so to speak, on this test is about 14 exactly. So I would say that you guys who got 14 and 17 should have passed this test if it were a real McKinsey test. Everyone else, pretty close, but not quite there yet, I would say. So again, if you get more points than that, like Anton got, that shows a high probability of passing the test. The further away you get from 14 on the lower side, the lower your chances are. Again, you can still pass, but the chances are lower. I think chances are pretty good if you get 14 or more. So what I mean is that good job, Natasha. You got 14.
Thank you.
But Valentin, what about you? What's your impression?
Pretty sustainable results for me. So I didn't have time to really work with the last couple of questions. I just tried to put something by chance, frankly speaking. And as usual, like time pressure, a lot of simple hooks in statements which are crucial when you're trying to crack the question. And if you missed it and you see it afterwards, feel yourself angry that you missed it while you're doing it. Pretty sustainable result.
Yeah, that's right. I also wanted to point out some interesting fact about this test. Look, the guys who got 14 and above managed to somehow tackle questions 23, 24, and 25, 26. So the final questions, while everyone else seems to have missed them. So the key takeaway for me is here, try to cover all the questions, because sometimes you have very, very easy questions at the end. Not all questions at the end are easy, of course, but there are quite a few that are easy. So you'd better have time to devote to them. And I see that those guys who got 14 and above did indeed have time for the final 4 questions. So that's good. That's good. All right, I suggest we get started with discussion. Question 1, Cupid's arrow. We'll go to Grigory. Please tell us how you tackled question number 1.
Oh, well, I actually was glad for question 1 because I found it the easiest one as opposed to the rest of the test, which I think went terrible. Well, so it's pretty much just in the statement that CEO had. I was just looking back to the paragraph, the management of Cupid arrow. This this paragraph where the CEO is mentioned, right? So I pretty much just underlined there's a unique market opportunity there. Actually, hold on a second. Let me just read it. The Cupid arrow competitive advantage, and it might not be applicable in different geography. If from this paragraph I just underlined that that there's a unique market opportunity out there, that he's not sure, and considering so he fears that Cupid's arrow competitive advantage in the EU might not be applicable in a different geography, right? So and just from this statement, when I was comparing it to everything else, the option C seemed to be the most, because option C, I think, was talking about the market is promising, but they're not sure about the results. They're not confident about the results, and for that they need to define a proper market entry strategy before entering. So I hope that helps.
Gregory, I think option C makes sense, but what about other options? What makes A invalid, for example?
Okay, yeah, it's not the right market for Cupid's arrow because of strong competitor and different customer preferences in the UK, in which the company has no competitive edge. Well, he didn't actually say anything about it. The CEO didn't mention how it is not the right market. I think CEO actually said, you know, how UK is a good market. Yeah, it's so the management is actually considering, you know, entering UK market.
That's right. So, I agree.
And over here it says it's not the right market for Cupid Arrow because whatever it is, but the very first beginning, the very first statement says it's not the right market. So if it's not the right market, then they wouldn't consider expanding there. Then the second B is talking about the market is very different from the US, which is okay in terms of demographics, customer preference, and competitive landscape. And Cupid Arrow should bear this in mind when considering entry. Well, sure, yeah, that is obviously, like, everything makes sense in here, but this is not what CEO said. CEO actually was not sure, I think, if they can benefit from the demographics and customer and all that. So this is not addressing CEO's concerns completely. You know, this option.
Yep, that's right. And there's one more thing to it. The market is indeed very different, and that's what the CEO said. But the CEO did not mention customer preferences and competitive landscape. Maybe those qualities are pretty much the same across the markets. We don't know that. This is kind of extra information entering this option, which is something we cannot conclude from what the CEO told us. So that's why this option is irrelevant.
Yeah, well, I remember he had some final fears about like the CEO had some fears about not being able to translate US success to the UK success.
That's right.
But he had some fears about not being able to translate this into the UK market. But there's nothing about demographics, customer preference, and competitive landscape.
Exactly.
Like demographics and customer preference were not mentioned by the CEO. So it's like we can claim, we can speculate about this, but this is not what the CEO was talking about.
Yeah, this is new information entering this option. Simply new information.
Right. And if we were to skip option C for now and just move on to the D straight away and just take a look at it, Cupid's arrow should leverage its success in the US and adopt an aggressive marketing campaign in the UK. Otherwise, competing with Happy Heart will not be feasible. Great, maybe, but that's not what the CEO said. That CEO was actually doubtful about the ability of leveraging its United States success, and that's exactly the opposite. Actually, what the CEO said about the success is like unsure or setting some fears, whatever, not being able to translate the US success to UK market. And aggressive marketing campaign was actually applicable also to the Happy Heart or whatever it is, the market leader in the UK. So yeah, this option is just like, you know, it goes against what the CEO was talking about.
That's right.
That leaves the option C.
Yep, that's it. Thank you, Grigor. I agree. Any questions, guys? All right, no questions so far. Let's move on to the Next one. The next one goes to whom? Next one goes to Valentin. Valentin, please guide us through question 2.
Yeah, I would like to. Based on the data in table 1, which of the following is a valid conclusion? So option A, the total market share of players other than first 3, Happy Hearts, Lovebirds, and this Match Me Up, has been steadily declining over the past 2 years. But I decided option A doesn't work because we do not have data on Take Me Out, Take a Chance, table 2-4 for 2 years ago.
Actually, we do. Well, the reason there is a dash here is because probably they didn't exist, right? Because you see they were growing pretty fast from what seems to be nothing. So this dash is just, they didn't exist.
It was my first thing, but there is no supporting data in text. I didn't find it, at least that they didn't exist. I can read it both. There is no data, or they didn't exist. If I'm wrong, please tell me.
Okay, yeah. Here I think this is something. You're right that most things need to be stated in the test, but I think this is something that you should understand from the data. So if there is data missing, there definitely needs to be an explanation. The explanation is that, well, they were not there. Based on what we see here, the total number is the market grew, but these guys, everyone but the first 3 grew in faster. So those are just zeros. And so this conclusion is something we could actually test.
Yeah, so anyway, it doesn't matter. Either they didn't exist or they or there is no data. Option A doesn't work because it's not applicable to Take Me Out, Take a Chance, and table 4-2, right?
Well, you need to consider them as a group, right? What it says, the total market share of players other than Happy Hearts, Lovebirds, and Match Me Up, the total market share. So this is the sum of these numbers here. These numbers, then these numbers, and these numbers. And we're claiming that these shares, the shares of this number, the total, has increased.
Yeah. In last year and this year, the share of the last 4 rows is increased actually. Anyway, so
how do we know that the share increased? Because here we are talking numbers, not percent.
Apologize, I didn't get your last sentence.
Okay, well, how do we know that the share of these 4 guys increased? We see that the absolute value increased. That's right, but how do you know that the share increased?
In last year, just in among first 3, only Happy Hearts has some significant increasing from 30 to 40.
Let's look at the total numbers. I'm writing total numbers for everyone but the first 3, which is Take Me Out, Take a Chance, table 4-2, and other. So 2 years ago they were 30. Last year they were 45. And this year they are 30 plus 12 plus 12 plus 6, 60. So this is 6, 0. So we noticed that these guys doubled from 30 to 60, while everyone else did not double. Going from 30 to 53 is not doubling. Going from 20 to 22 is not doubling, obviously. So the speed of growth of these fantastic 4, so to speak, or rather fantastic 23, is definitely higher than the speed of growth of these 3 giants of the market. So that means that they were gaining share versus the giants of the market, the first 3 companies.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to you?
Yes, absolutely.
So now we just go back to the option and see whether we can conclude this or not. The total market of players other than us has been steadily declining. No, this is not true because it has been steadily growing rather than declining. So A is false. We cross it out. What about other options? Let's check B.
Take a chance in table 2-4 this year contribute more to the market growth in pounds than the rest of the market players. You just need to calculate contribution in terms of pounds, and it seems to me that the first biggest guy, as according to my calculation, contributed more.
That's right. The first company alone, Happy Hearts, contributed 13.3 million pounds, which is the difference between 53.3 and 40. Whereas Take Me Out and Take a Chance contributed. Take a Chance and Table 4-2 contributed 6 plus 6 equals 12. 12 is smaller than 13. So the first guy contributed more than these two companies. So that means that B is false.
Right. If this year trends is growth in growth rates in table continue for next 3 years, Happy Hearts has market share will plummet to the less than 1/3. And again, need to look through the last column and see what is the current situation and previous year in terms of market share of Happy Hearts. And now it is 40 of 5 plus.
Well, figuring out the trend would actually be figuring out the growth rate and then applying this growth rate to the future projection. So 2 years ago it was 30, then it became 40, so the growth rate is 33%. Same thing this year, the growth rate is 33%. So we can assume, based on the option, that next year and the year after next one, in 2 years, the growth rate will still be 33%. So we just need to calculate it next year and in 2 years. And same thing goes for all the remaining companies. But the problem is that calculating all these things will take us a lot of time. So I'd rather suggest that we pause C and not waste our time on it, and rather try to tackle D, which might be actually easier than option C. Let's look at D because you'll see that D is pretty straightforward actually.
Yeah, it's easy. Of the other 20 players in UK online, at least one must be making more than 1.5 million pounds per year, which seems to me false, because altogether they make 30 million, and there are 20 of them. So it might be that everybody do not earn.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you put it correctly. It might be that everyone made 1.5 million, and there was no company that made more than 1.5 million. This is the only case. The only possible case is when everyone's revenue was the same. Of course, this case might be pretty rare, but we cannot say it's not possible. So in theory, this could happen. So D actually could work, but we don't know whether it indeed works or not. So our judgment for D is we don't know. D is unknown. But we're not looking for something which is unknown. We're looking for something which is a valid conclusion, which is true. The only option which appears to be true after all is C, by elimination.
Actually, D is not unknown. It's false. So.
Let me think about it.
As I understand. I'm sorry.
You're right. You're right. You're right, because there is must.
Mm-hmm.
So if we say, does everyone have to? Does there have to be a company making more than 1.5 million? No, that doesn't. So yeah, that's false. You're right. That's not unknown. That's false. You're right. Absolutely. Well, thanks for your explanation, Valentin. I think that's it. Do you guys have questions about question 2? All right, no questions so far. Let's go to question 3 then. And question 3. Question 3. Who shall I ask this time? Memory is not here. Tashi, uh, please guide us through question 3.
Mm-hmm. So based on the preliminary information about the business of Cupid's arrow and the data in table 1, which of the following is a valid conclusion? So first we just go Cupid's arrow, and we know that this Cupid's arrow revenue is 30 million per year in US dollars. Well, we know that in table 1 we have everything in pounds. So basically we just have to calculate and go step by step in options, and we know we can then see that B option, Happy Hearts, is at least twice as big as Cupid's arrow in terms of revenue. And we know that Happy Hearts have revenue like 53.3. And then we just look at the exchange rate from the US. So we have, we said 30 US dollars. And then if we divide it by 1.2, we get that this is around 25 million pounds. So this means that Cupid's arrow is, that Happy Heart is at least twice, or it's more than twice bigger than Cupid's arrow in terms of revenue.
Yeah, that's right. But how come you started considering B and not A?
Okay. Well, I didn't start considering B immediately. Yeah, the first one, So A, due to its market leadership position, Happy Hearts is making more in advertising revenue than do Lovebirds and so on. This we can't really prove because we have no information about advertising revenue. So
yeah, that's right. We know that there is revenue coming from advertising, and then there is revenue coming from subscriptions. But we don't know which goes from advertising, which comes from subscription. So A is unknown to us. That's right.
Exactly. So then C, this year Cupid's arrow reported the same financial results as Happy Hearts did 2 years ago. So for me, this was a bit tricky. Financial results, it's not only revenue, right? So revenue, we have information about revenue, but financial results could be as well EBIT, EBITDA, or gross profit or anything. So for me, this was actually, I can't prove this.
Yeah, that's right. I would say that in here you won't really need to dig too much because this test is made for someone who doesn't really understand accounting and finance, right? This is a test for, I don't know, rocket scientists to whom financial results might be the same thing as the only thing we have here, revenue. So you could make a conclusion based on revenue, and that would be also okay because the only financial results available is revenue. But I think your reasoning also makes sense. And anyways, this option is not correct.
And then D, the number of Cupid's arrow paying customers this year exceeds 90,000. And this one is not right as well. And I think it's because we have information that we have monthly subscription fee of 25 So if you calculate this per year, yeah, so 250, so 300, and then you just divide the total revenue by this.
Well, and the fun fact about
yes, I mean, again, we just have then information about subscription
that's
revenue,
right,
but not from the advertising. So we can't really, if we would look only the subscription, then we could actually potentially make this conclusion. But because we don't know advertising, we can't say that.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't really need to spend time calculating we don't know anything, and we don't know enough information to make this conclusion.
Exactly, yes.
So yeah, what we conclude is that B is our right option.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Tasha. Questions, guys? Anything? All right. No questions at this point. Let's go to question 4 then. Question 4. Okay, question 4 was a bit more difficult, I see. Maria, explain please how you did question 4.
Yeah. Hi. So question 4, really I did it through, I don't know how to call it in English, but it was an expression with X, and I just
equation.
It.
Yeah, you made up an equation. Yep.
Yeah, and I just solved it for an argument X. So let us start from the revenue side. We know that the customers are charged a monthly subscription fee of £20. So we have £20 multiplied by 12, it's a number of months, and multiplied by X, it's a number of customers. So that stands from the revenue side. Yes? Now we need the smallest number, and the smallest number for me, it means like a sort of a break-even point. So I just made it that this revenue with having this number of customers should be equal to costs. Yeah, so now I would like to calculate costs. So the calculate costs are for marketing, it is 2 million for campaigns and plus £60 multiplied by X. Therefore, at infrastructure, it is 4,000 per day multiplied by 350. Yes, and for IT support is 500,000 plus 15 multiplied by X. It is a number of customers, and that means support is 300,000 plus 5 multiplied by X. And then I just made a quotation this sides, and thus I estimated the number of customers, which will give us that the revenue and the costs will be equal. Thus, it is like at this minimum level, there will be no profit because the quotation is equal, and thus having estimated that amount, I found out the number. Yeah, okay, then I will go. Yeah, that the total number of costs is 10 million plus 1.6, sorry, 1.4 plus 0.8. So altogether, it comes that 12,200,000 equals 160. Yes. Yes, and then you just divide 1,200.
Yeah, that's right.
by 100x.
And you can also notice that the division is quite simple, right? If you divide 12 million by 160, you'll end up with 75,000. But we have 12.2, which is more than 12. So the answer should be something more than 75,000. And the first option that's bigger than 75 is 77B. And B is actually the right answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, the equation that you built is correct. That's it. Yep. Thank you, Maria. Any questions, guys? All right, let's move on. Well, this equation is pretty time-consuming, but I think that's kind of one of the most difficult equations that you could see in a test. For example, you will never see a quadratic equation or anything more difficult. So if you can tackle this one, you can tackle all kinds of equations. So that's great news. Now we're talking about question 5. And question 5, I like to ask Anton. Anton, please guide us through question 5.
Yes, thank you. Just a second. Question 5. Well, I think question 5 is a very straightforward but very like time-consuming calculation. Basically, you have population in target age range, which is 8,190 men among 30. Okay, it's 8-something million men among 31 roughly million men, and then it's somewhat 9 million women among 32 million women, and then you just have to calculate two fractions, and you'll find out for men it's what 26% and for women 28%. So the difference is 2 percentage points.
That's right. This solution is correct, but I would suggest that there is a shorter approach, which could help you save you some time. And this approach is actually testing options. So you can test A, you can test C, and see that neither A nor C work. So the only option that's working is B. How would you do that? You see that the total population is about 30K. No, 30 million rather.
Yeah.
31 and 32. So 1 percentage point here would be roughly 300. 2 percentage points would be roughly 600. 10 percentage points would be about 3K, 3 million in this context. And now you look at the difference in population target age range between male and female. So females are 9,000 something, and males are 8,200 almost. So the difference is roughly 800. And you can notice that the difference is definitely not 300. So it's not 1 percentage point. But at the same time, you can also notice that the difference is not 10 percentage points. It's not 3K, not 3 million. It's smaller. So that's why A does work, C does work, and obviously D does work.
Can you write on screen today?
Say it again, sorry?
Can you write on screen today?
Yeah, I can. The problem is that I cannot write and speak simultaneously because I need to hold my microphone so there's not too much noise. I either speak or write, but there's not much to write in this question, frankly speaking. Well, here I managed to write and speak simultaneously. Wow, small circus performed by myself. You can notice that the difference is 800, right?
Yes.
The base is pretty much similar, around 31K. 31K. And if you test each option one by one, you notice that 1% percentage points would be about 300, which is definitely not 800. 2 is about 600. well, again, not 800, but there is rounding taking place here. So rounding could spoil the answer a bit. And then 10 percentage points is 3K, which is obviously too much. So obviously C is too much, A is too little, B, well, not sure, but because of rounding could work. Because of rounding could work, and so we select B and claim that that's our answer and move on.
Yeah, thank you. I was looking for this shortcut.
Yep. So to me, this shortcut is called testing options. This is, by the way, this is very interesting because this is something widely used in American math education in the United States. For us, for those who studied mostly in Russia and CIS countries, we tend to be focused on theoretical proofs. So you would try to prove in theory while this works. You would try to construct an equation, test it, and so on. Sometimes this takes just too much time. You just need to go and test it. And this is where this approach comes into place. And this is actually a very good idea. But this is something those people who had Russian or similar to Russian education need to get used to. But this is very powerful sometimes. This is very powerful. Questions? All right, let's move to the next question. And the next question is quite tricky, frankly speaking. Grigory, why don't you tell us how you solved the next question, please? Here it is.
Excuse me. Yeah. Question 6. Yeah. Which of the following reasons, if true, would not help explain why the number of single UK males interested in online dating and willing to pay for a subscription service in Table 2 is smaller than the number of UK females interested in online dating and willing to pay for a subscription service? Excellent. So let's start with A. Life expectancy for females in the United Kingdom is higher than life expectancy for males. Hey, maybe, you know, who knows, we may be able to verify or, you know, contradict this, but we have no data about it. So the table does not tell us anything. We have no information about it. So this statement does not help explain why interested and willing to pay customers, like there are less males than females. So this does not explain to us, you know, why there are less.
That would mean that A is the right answer, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Hold on. Yeah. Right. I messed it up a little bit. I got confused. If true, right? If true. Okay. So if true, it would actually help explain maybe somehow. We're just not sure. It's actually it's uncertain. Like I was uncertain about this, so I marked it as unknown, uncertain, not. So I can't really negate it.
Yep.
But I can't really accept it as well. So just decided to.
Let me try and share the logic behind this type of questions in general. So this is a funnel, well, a classic funnel, going from something wide from a wide variable like total population to a share of it, or a share to something really small. So we start with total population, then we take a share of it, which is population target age range, then we take a share of that, which is population target age range that are single, and then a share of that, which is single people interested in online dating, and again a share of that, single people interested in online dating and willing to pay for a subscription service. Yeah. So how does the funnel work? So if the neck, well, the wider part of the funnel, is bigger for one variable, for one for one group than for the other group, then it would also result in the bigger neck, so to speak, the bigger end. So if we're saying that the population, the life expectancy for females is bigger, if we assume this is true, that will explain why we have more females than males. And that would explain why down the line, going from top to bottom, we would end up with a bigger number for single people interested in online dating. So if we start with X and Y, and if X is smaller than Y, then if we multiply it by several numbers, which might be pretty much the same, we will still end up with a number X. Well, I'll call it X1, which is smaller than Y1. And this is X1, this is Y1. So this is just the logic of a funnel, which is one of the possible selection criteria in a premise question. Well, I know that from common sense that sounds a bit weird, and total population seems not to make any sense and not to be useful here. But in fact, if you apply the funnel logic here, it starts making sense.
It actually does, yeah. Now that you pointed out, demonstrated in such way, then yeah, it actually kind of proves this point and stuff. Yeah. So then we can conclude, yeah, that it could pretty much explain maybe the number of male being
the difference, the difference. Well, one more interesting thing here is why funnels are so important. Funnels are so important because this is how market models are actually built. You start with something pretty generic, pretty wide, something you can get from statistical data, like the number of population in a certain city or in a certain country, and then you apply different coefficients, different variables. For example, share of population in something, share in something else, and then you arrive at your market model. So this example here that we have is pretty much a basic, a very simple scheme for a market model. Of course, the real market models would be more precise, would be more complicated, but the idea behind that would be pretty similar. So once you get into consulting, you'll see quite a lot of them in practice.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, excellent. Yeah, this is great. Actually, this is a better approach to to solving it. Definitely. So then the option B. Online dating agencies in UK spend more marketing efforts on attracting female users than they do on attracting male users. Could be, yeah. Since without so excluding the option A, previous option, without the funnel logic, or just by looking at the numbers, since there are more than since there are more females who are single and interested and willing to pay than males, and given this condition that they're being bombarded or targeted with more advertisement, it could be, if true, it could be an explanation.
Yeah, because this is a force. Marketing is a force that impacts the difference. So if we put more advertising to females than to males, then that would explain the difference. Of course, the more advertising you put to a certain group, the more people from this group will come and buy your service. So this is a good explanation for the funnel. So yeah, that could work. That could work. But we're looking for something that will not work. So let's look further.
Yeah. So if we for just a second skip the option C and look at option D for now, D for David, UK males are less likely to pay for online services than UK females, and in the survey, I think somewhere it is mentioned about. In the very start somewhere, it is mentioned that well, actually, sorry, I don't think that there's any prior info about this, but this maybe could be true because this is an online service and they're not paying for it. They will less men are willing to pay for online service, and this online dating is an online service.
Yeah, and notice that D is a pretty simple option. It just says men don't want to pay, whereas females are more likely to pay. And this is
Yeah.
exactly what hits the neck of the funnel, so to speak. Yeah,
Right.
because the people we're interested in are those that are interested in online dating and willing to pay. So if males are interested in online dating and not willing to pay, that would explain the difference in those who are willing to pay. So yeah, D would work in this case.
Right. And now finally, option C, I think the giveaway, the one that actually talks about like what makes it just not even like help would not explain, it's just wrong, is the statement when it says online shopping and services represent a smaller portion of a monthly budget for males than for females. So the word budget and small, so there are less men than women because of the budget. I don't think it's applicable to us because we are talking about those who are willing to pay. So budget is not a consideration here, because we are comparing those who are already willing to pay. So they already have a budget, I suppose.
No, that's right, but we're talking about them as a share of those who would like to have this service in general. But some of them are willing to pay, some of them are not willing to pay. And the budget consideration in this case is applicable to this split. But the budget, we need to have more information about the budget. The problem is that the share of budget itself doesn't really give us a lot of information until we know about the relative budgets. We need to understand who has a bigger budget on this specific thing, who has a smaller budget on this specific thing, in absolute values. Because the share could be smaller, but the overall budget could be bigger, and then a smaller share of a bigger budget would still result in a bigger number. All this might not be true. We don't know, but we still need more information to make a definitive answer. And C alone would really help us address the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
Yep. So that leads us to C is the right answer. Thank you, Gregorio. Do you guys have questions? Okay. Question 7 then. Question 7. Question 7. Okay, you did it quite well. Okay, Anton, please guide us through question 7.
Well, it's actually very straightforward.
It is.
There's a small trick. Yeah. Above the exhibit 1, there's some text. And this is question 1, a sample of 1,200 responses in the UK and 1,000 responses in the US. And in the chart, the first column refers to US and the second to UK. So that's all you have to bear in mind. US, 52% of 1,000 respondents said it doesn't carry a stigma anymore, and 25%, which is 1/4 of 1,200 in UK. So 520 plus 300 makes 820. Option C.
That's right. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, you also need to be careful with this anymore thing. So we're looking for people, not those saying that there is no stigma, but those who believe there is no stigma anymore. So someone who used to believe that there is a stigma, someone who thought that before there was a stigma, but not anymore. So these guys. And if we select the first two options, so no, there never was, and no, not anymore, we would make a mistake. This is another detail that you need to pay attention to in order not to make a mistake. But otherwise, the calculation is simple. I agree with you, Anton. And the answer is C. Thank you, Anton. Any questions, guys? All right. All right. Yeah. Since you don't have questions about this one, let's go to question 8. Question 8 goes to whom? Uh, Question 8 goes to Pavel is not here. Okay, question 8 goes to Valentin then. Valentin, please explain question. Valentin, did you hear me?
Apologize, I was muted. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Based on the information provided in Exhibit 1, which of the following statements is a valid conclusion? So again, one by one. During the course of the survey, each day of the survey, company collected more responses to question 1 than to question 2. What we know about this question 1, that it was 1,200 responses in UK and 1,000 responses in US, and it was 5 days duration, but we do not know any distribution between the days, and we don't know what amount of people what amount of responses do we have during each single day.
We don't even know whether the surveys were run simultaneously. Maybe they ran at different times.
Yeah, but right. Thanks. We even don't know about this. But anyway, option A doesn't look like a correct one, and I put it eliminated. Second one, some of people who answered the first question of the survey declined to answer the second question of the survey. There is no information about it.
Well, same here. We don't even know whether the people who answered the first survey were actually the same people who answered the questions to the second survey. Maybe they were completely different people. So maybe there was no one.
They do not know any correspondence between the two sets.
That's right.
B doesn't. They see there was at least one day in which the survey company collected less than 220 responses to the question about expectation from using of an online dating agency. So it's about question number 2. It was 900 responses in UK and 1,000 in US. So totally it was 1,900, and it was 7 days. What do we know about that? At least one day in which the survey company. So if we have 7 days, and in total it's 1,900, it means that, if I'm not mistaken, that we need 1 day to have more than 250.
Yeah, I think here it's important to try and test different options. Is it possible to come up with a situation in which there was 1 day in which the survey company collected less than 250 responses? Is it possible to come up with such a situation? The answer is yes, because you can have a situation in which in 1 day they collected just 1 response or 0 responses, and then the remaining days they collect everything else. But at the same time, the opposite option is also possible, right? If you collected more than 250 responses every day, because if you divide the total number by 7, you still end up with a number bigger than 250. So that's why C is unknown. We don't know which specific situation we are facing here. Does it make sense?
Apologize. At least 1 day in which the survey collected 1 day.
Yep. Our judgment is we don't know. Maybe there was. Maybe there wasn't. We're not sure.
So you're saying that there is no way to calculate this, right?
There's no way to make sure, yeah. There's no way to make sure which situation we are facing, as opposed to option D, where we can say for sure something about the number of responses.
Right.
Let's look at D now and see
D,
the difference. Yep.
And option D, we are working with question 1, which was 2,200 total responses within 5 days. And option D is asking us whether there are days in which the survey company collected more than 430 response to the question about stigma, and we have to prove it just starting from vice versa. Let's say no, and if we multiply 430 times 5, because the duration of the survey was 5 days, we would have 2,150. But we have 2,200 responses. It means that at one day it was more than 430, because we need to put some extra 50 responses.
Yep. So guys, pay attention to the difference between options C and D. In option C, we cannot say in what situation we are. Maybe there was a day in which the company collected less than 250 responses. Maybe there was not such a day. But in D, we can say for sure that there was at least one day when we collected more than 430 responses. Because if we assume the contrary, if we assume that this day did not exist, then we would see a contradiction. Something contradicting our data, which is not possible in the test. Does it make sense? Yep. Okay. No questions. Thank you, guys. Let's move on to question 9 then. Question 9. Question 9. Okay. Well, many people dealt with it quite well. Mireille, please guide us through question 9.
Hi all. Apologies for being late today. Which of the following statement is a valid conclusion about general attitude to online dating in US and UK? My option was, one second, let me see. My option was A. Let's see it one by one. Larger percentage of people in UK than US believe there is a negative attitude towards online dating and treat online dating agencies and platforms for socializing and flirting rather than legitimate places to meet their further spouses. We need to see the same chart. Larger percentage. Alicia, 1 second. Larger percentage, let me see. Find, I'm just moving. 1 second, I apologize. Так. Мама. Гуля. Алиш, посмотри. 1 second, apologize. 100% okay, negative. We need to compare the socializing and flirting larger than legitimate places. It is the chart number 2. Hello. Hello.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Apologize. We are comparing the people for socializing and for the legitimate meet my life partner. These two bars.
Okay.
And we see that the last one is smaller than the first one. And believe there is negative attitude towards believe negative attitude. Yes, and the figures confirms this option. The larger the percentage of the total UK responded for the socializing, and the less for the legitimate status.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So you basically split option A in two parts. You check the validity of the first exhibit and the second exhibit, and you see that both parts are correct. And if both parts are correct, or better to say true, then the whole expression is true. So that's why A is true. And then, because this is a conclusion question, we don't really need to look through other options. Because once we find the right one, we're not interested in anything else. And we just pick A. But guys, let me know, do you want to discuss B, C, and D? Or is it something straightforward that you would like to skip?
Let's discuss.
Let's discuss. Okay, let's discuss. So, Mireille, please have a look at other options. Have a look at B as well.
Frankly speaking, I did not see the other options when I was responding for this question.
Oh, fair point.
First one. Yeah.
Fair point. In this case, Anton, why don't you explain option B, please?
The majority believe. Could you please go back to the chart?
Sure.
On my dating, but would not marry someone. Well, the majority of US respondents believe there's nothing wrong with online dating. That's probably true, but would not marry someone on an online dating site. That's probably not correct, because 61% of them are looking for a soulmate.
You see that there is a true true part of the option and a false part of the option, and true plus false equals false. So that's why the overall option is false. Yep. Thank you, Anton. C goes to Kirill. Kirill, please explain your thoughts on option C.
So, C, the attitude of the UK respondents towards online dating is gradually improving, and so most likely they will recognize the merits of online dating agencies in helping find their soulmates, life partners. Honestly, when I responded on this question, I responded incorrectly, so I put B. Now I understood, but I didn't go further after B, so I didn't look at C and D.
Okay, let me ask it this way: who can explain why C is not the right option? Speak up.
Is that because we don't know the timeline?
Oh,
there's no chronology.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah, that's true. Gradually improving. There's no dynamics here. We have something static. We have a picture of what's true now, what's the status quo, but we don't know how this was changing over time. So gradually improving thing is something that breaks this whole option. I agree. Thanks, Grigoro. D goes to Tashi. Tashi, please explain your thoughts on D.
Yes, the UK society is more traditional and dogmatic than US, and unless profound changes in the mindset of people take place, companies like Cupid's Arrow aiming at helping users find their life partners will not succeed in this market. So I think there's so many things written here that we can't really prove that, yes, I was just like, how can we prove that UK society is more traditional and dogmatic than the US? And unless profound changes in the mindset. Yeah. Too many statements are made here that we can't prove.
Yeah, that pretty strong statements. Something we won't be able to prove even given our data. So yeah, these are, and guys, usually strong statements are incorrect. So watch out for them. If you see something too strong, then it's probably wrong. So yep, that's why these out. Thank you, Tashi. Well, that's it. That's how we covered A, B, C, and D, all of them. Omega. Well, by the way, Omega is the real case. So the first case is something I made up based on some different materials. And Omega is a case that I really faced myself. That was my first private equity due diligence, actually. So it would be interesting to look at a case that's based on a true story. 10. Question 10 goes to Maria. Maria, please guide us through question 10.
So question 10, just let me take my notes. So yes, what I've done here is that I first rounded the Omega CEO and the word takeover, and then I came back. Could you just please scroll up a bit upper for us to see?
Sure.
Yeah.
I see, this here, yeah. Here it is.
Yes. So the CEO is it is here, yes. So the news was a bucket of cold water, yes. And what he's telling that we need to improve our profit margins and hope that the stock market recognize our efforts. And I want McKinsey to start crafting a turnaround strategy. So what is important that he wants to improve profit margins, and that will help them to recognize the stock market, and that will make a high valuation, and thus he believes that a high valuation will throw away the offender. And now, knowing that information, we can go to our question.
Good.
Option A, it is still believes that the only way to avoid the takeover is to depress Omega's profits, blah, 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 blah. It is the counter opposite to what is saying, because he believes that we should to increase profits, then to increase valuation, and so etc. So we just cross A. The B, the CEO wants to grow profitability of Omega in order to achieve a higher valuation of the company and thus sell it at a higher price. Really, he doesn't want to sell it at a higher price because he wants to take the offender off, and there is no information of whether he wants to sell or not. So thus we just cross that point out. So we cross B, because sell at a higher price, it is incorrect.
That's right.
So
that's
question
right.
C. Sorry, point C. The CEO was surprised to learn about the takeover, but believes that the higher stock price of Omega would drive away the rider. So was surprised, I suppose that can be referred to the words of a cold bucket. And he really believes that the higher stock price of Omega would drive. Yes, so it's correct. And just for those to tackle the option D, and the CEO wants McKinsey to craft it to increase revenue and repel the corporate rider. That's not quite true, because it is not the problem of revenue. As mentioned, it was the problems of profits that will lead to higher valuation. So we just cross out option D, and the only one is C, and we are okay with that.
Yep, I agree with you, Maria. Thank you very much. Questions, guys? All right, that was clear. Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick question. I a little bit misunderstood the difference between C and D, because I answered D. I thought D is also a possible answer in this question.
Okay, let's look and see the C was surprised to learn about the takeover, but there is a higher stock price, Omega would drive away the raider. So we want to drive away the raider, that's true. We want to drive them away with a higher stock price. And the higher stock price comes from profitability, higher margins. Okay, so C seems to be true. What about D? The C wants McKinsey to craft a turnaround strategy. Well, not sure about turnaround strategy, but they said that they need to do something about it now. That's right. But then, in order to increase revenues and repel the corporate trader, no, that's not the point. They don't want to increase revenues. They want to increase profit margin. And using the profit margin, get a high valuation. Based on this high valuation, repel the raider. So the C was not talking about revenues. The revenues here is misplaced.
I see.
Because you can increase profit margins without increasing revenues. You can actually decrease revenues and increase profit margins. And this is something we'll see later in the case, by the way. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Question 11. Question 11 goes to Grigorio, to you. Please explain your ideas on question 11.
Sure. Actually, let me see which option I chose. Okay. Just had to confirm. All right. So based on the data presented in Table 1 and Exhibit 1, which of the following statement is true? Option A, among the 6 years shown in Table 1 and Exhibit 1, Omega made the biggest profits 5 years ago. So just Table 1, 5 years ago, Omega's profits were 1,500 million. And the 1,500 million, just because the question refers to Table 1, that's why I looked at it. And then Omega makes its biggest profit 5 years ago. And then looking at the Exhibit 1, it shows that EBIT development and in terms of percent was the largest for country C, country B, and country A. It kind of looks like a good option, but hold on a second, actually. Yeah, so cumulatively, it actually looks like a legitimate option, because just by looking at the Exhibit 1 and country C and the dramatic fall that it then happened, it then drove the consolidated profits. So after 5 years ago, consolidated profits were the highest, and then after that,
very good. That's right. Very good.
Yeah, they've been steadily, continuously declining, and nothing had brought it back to the levels 5 years ago that we had seen 5 years ago.
That's right.
So the consolidated just pretty much demonstrated this dynamic.
Then the problem is that the revenues were growing. 5 years ago they were at the lowest, and then this year they are at the highest. How would you explain that?
Well, the many factors for that.
Sorry, I think that was a wrong question from me. Not explain the revenue growth, but rather explain the fact that an increasing revenue and a decreasing profit margin still resulted in lower profit now than it was 5 years ago.
They might be actually having higher costs associated with either fixed or variable costs. It's just like higher costs. They have smaller profitability.
Yep. That's right.
They're making money, but yeah.
I think I'm just not being precise with what I'm asking. You said that 5 years ago the profits were at their highest. Yep. Question.
Yeah, just possible reason they could have reduced prices, and they're growing, but their profitability.
No, hold on. I'm not asking about reasons for revenue growth. I'm asking about mathematically. Why do we believe that 5 years ago the profits were at their lowest? Oh, sorry, at their highest, even though revenues were at their lowest?
Oh, so the market has been growing and more entrants have been in the market, like more competitors. As well, they just diluted their share.
But that wouldn't lead to us having higher profits 5 years ago. Oh no, you mean that the competitive dynamics changed. Yeah, but here we're not even talking about business. Frankly speaking, here we're talking about math. How can it mathematically be?
I think, Victor, don't we just calculate like 5 years ago we have a revenue, let's say around 1,600.
Yes.
And then you just go what is EBIT margin? It's around
Yes.
4%. So what I did, I just calculated 4% of like 1,569. Or this year 1% of 25.99.
Yeah.
And I could see that figure. So this is what I did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. In terms of calculation, the logic behind calculations is correct. So we need to multiply revenue by the profit margin each year, and that will end up with the right number and the right intuition. But here, there's a small trick that will allow you not to do this calculation, because calculating revenue times profit margin for each year would be pretty time consuming, right? But what you could do, you could take Grigorio's logic further and notice that the revenue did increase from 5 years ago to this year, but this increase was pretty small, right? It was smaller than doubling. So 5 years ago, revenue was indeed smaller than this year, but this difference is not even 2 times. It's smaller. While at the same time, the difference in profit margins is much higher. Because profit margins, 5 years ago, profit margin was 3.5%. And then in each of the following years, it never climbed over 1%. So, profit margin reduced 3 times, while revenue increased less than 2 times. That means that profit overall decreased because a higher revenue was more than outweighed by lower profit margin. So here, revenue small, revenue slightly bigger, but profit margin very big, profit margin smaller, much smaller. So big profit margin plus not that big revenue is more than slightly bigger revenue and much smaller profit margin.
Oh, right.
And you can notice it just by looking at the numbers without explicit calculation, right? So this is kind of a specific characteristic of the data that you can observe and that could help you understand what's going on in this question, at least in this option.
Interesting, yeah.
So the interesting thing here is that you split profit into 2 drivers. The first driver being revenue, the second driver being profit margin. And then you see how each of them develop. And then you combine their development in your final judgment about how profit changed. This is exactly what Grigorio did, but I just gave more, so to speak, mathematical explanation behind this process. But the intuition that Grigorios provided is correct. Does it make sense?
Still, yeah, it does make sense, and it's actually good to have the math approach kind of perspective on it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, frankly speaking, this ability to see certain patterns in data is pretty useful. It will be useful in consulting once you join it, and frankly speaking, it will be useful even beyond consulting. For example, now I'm studying for data science, and I realized that in data science, like in consulting, you really need to understand what's going on in the data, like these small things, and then you know which model to apply to it. But this is kind of a digression from our main topic, but my point is that understanding what's going on in the data is sometimes quite useful. Let's look at other. Yep. Question? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's another way to answer question 11. Yeah, because options B, C, and D all speak about profits in different countries, and there's no split of revenue for different countries, so they are automatically out.
Very good point. Very good point. That's right. What I wanted to explain to you in this approach to option A is that you don't really need to skip A. You can easily tackle it without calculation and then move to B, C, and D. But at the same time, you're right that B is, frankly speaking, even easier, and C is even easier. D is, well, also easier, but with a small trick. But we're going to discuss it right now. I want Gregorio to tackle options B and C as well.
Sure. Among the 3 countries 1 year ago, country C had the lowest profit and country A had the highest profit. So if we look at the exhibit, well, the 3 countries 1 year ago, country C had the lowest profit. Yep, and then country B had the highest profit. But we don't know the size of the market. So on the exhibit,
not exactly. We don't know the revenues. Yes, revenues of this company in a particular market in country A, B, and C. We don't have the revenue split, as Anton pointed out. We have revenue overall, so we cannot say anything about profits in these specific countries. That's right.
That's true as well, right? Then option C, this year Omega made a larger profit in country B than it did 1 year ago. And again, we just can't compare the revenues.
That's right.
And right, and then the only year, option D, the only year when profits in country A and B did not compensate for the loss in country C was 2 years ago. Once again, we don't have the revenue data, and
well, this time we do. This time we do.
But I mean, like, but what I wanted to say is that by looking at the exhibit itself, the countries A and B has been constantly above 0, as well as above the consolidated. So they have been actually compensating for
yes,
the loss of country C since 4 years ago.
But there is 1 year that was an exception. Which year was it?
What year? 5 years ago, I suppose.
Not exactly. We're looking at the consolidated profit margin, and we try to see where consolidated profit margin was below 0. That means that country A and B could not compensate for the negative profit in country C.
Right. Sorry. So yeah, then it's obviously 3 years ago.
That's right. That was 3 years ago, and the option says it was 2 years ago. No, that's wrong. That was not 2 years ago. That was 3 years ago. So yep, that said, A is the right answer, and then we crossed out B, C, and D. Thank you, Gregorio. Questions?
Yeah. Thank you.
No questions? Okay. Question 12. Question 12 goes to him. Question 12 goes to Valentin.
Yep. What is the number of survey response who say that they always shop at Omega? So we need to investigate first column with numbers and step by step divide it from the total amount of respondents. There are 1,006 of them, if I'm not mistaken. So
that's right.
And just calculate the step by step. 70. And the measurements is in percent. So we have to multiply 70% of 1,006 is about 701. Then 83% from 700 is about 570, if I'm not mistaken. Then 27% of 570 is roughly more than a quarter. Let's say.
Okay. Okay.
145, and then 40% of that is a quarter, which is a quarter from 145 is 30.
So yep, that's
30.
roughly 41. And your approach is correct. You just take the basis, which is 1,000 roughly, and then multiply all these numbers. So again, this is a funnel, right? Similar to what we saw with our Cupid's arrow example. From the bigger part of it, from the bigger start to the more narrow end. And the more narrow end is I always shop there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct answer is 41, right?
Yeah, that's right. The correct answer is 41.
Apologize for.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Valentin. Questions?
Victor, and if there is an opportunity to somehow speed up the calculations here?
Well, good question. I think I would address them pretty much in a straightforward fashion, but I would try to round things up a bit. So I would start with 1,000. Then I would take 70 times 80, which is 560. Then I would take 25% out of it, which is what, 40, which is 400 over 4 plus 160 over 4, which is 140. Then we take roughly 40% out of 140, which is what? Which is about 60. And then we take 67% out of 60, which is about 40. So not too much of a simplification, but something I could do in my head, for example.
Can I suggest a way?
Yes, please. Sure.
I'll try to write. So it's 1,000 times 7 over 10 times 5 over 6 times 27 over 100 times roughly 4 over 10 and
let me add a commentary here. 5, 6 actually comes from 83, and you can notice it because 83 is 100 minus 17, and 17 is roughly 16.6, and you can remember that 16.6 is 1/6. So 1 minus 1, 6 is 5/6.
And then 67% is 2/3. And then
okay,
2, 5, and 10 you can eliminate. This you can eliminate. This you will have 9. So 90, well, basically 10 and 10. And now you have well, this is very like roughly 1, so 9 times 4 is 36, so this is like the closest.
Well, I would say good approach if you manage to do this quickly. So the intuition is good, but at the same time, I'm afraid that if you need to write all things down, it might be pretty slow. But if you can do it fast, then that would be pretty good approach actually.
Just as an option.
Yeah, but thanks for suggesting. Interesting to see that. Thank you. Questions? All right, let's look at question 13 now. Question 13. Mireille, please explain question 13.
Suppose that Omega could strengthen its marketing efforts and reach the average score. How should the statements 1-5 be ranked according to improvement potential from lowest to highest? The table which we see above, it's about the results of consumer survey in percentage result. Results. The average score of competitors 1 and 2. I don't have my notes, therefore it's a little bit difficult for me to remember what I used.
That's fine. I think it's more important, rather than showing calculation, it's important to show the logic. And the logic being that we need to come up with the average first, then we need to come up with the delta, average versus omega, and then we need to sort those deltas. And then the correct sorting order would be the answer. So the average here is 85, the average here is, well, what, 90, then the average here is 35, 41, 52.5. And the delta would be 15 here, 7 here, 8 here, 2 here, and then negative actually here, so we can write 0. And then once we have these numbers here, we just write them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we sort them up. And once we sort them up, we arrive at the correct answer. So obviously B is out, D is out, because the smallest number is 5 from lowest to highest, and then we just need to pick A or C, and the correct order is actually mixed. So 5th, 4th, 2nd, 3rd, 1st. So that's okay if you don't have your calculations by the hand, Mary, because, well, the general logic, I think, is more important.
Yes, but it's a little bit difficult to remember each question.
Yeah, that's right, of course, that's right. Did you follow a similar approach?
Not exactly the same.
How was your approach different?
I used the averages.
Okay.
And calculated, but it is difficult for me to remember. Just
okay.
Come back with my logic a little bit later.
Okay.
While,
sure. No.
My notes.
Yeah, no worries about it. Sure. Thanks, Mary. Questions, guys?
Just a quick question. I mean, is it possible to not calculate averages here because the figures quite close? So for the first option between competitor 1 and 2, we have average is 85. But in order to economize time, is it possible just to think about something in the middle? I actually came up to the correct question, so answer is C, but I didn't use, so I didn't calculate the averages. So I just think about some like a median.
But the challenge with this approach is that you won't be able to distinguish between 2 and 3. They are pretty close.
Yes, but the fourth option, I think, is out automatically because, oh, no, not the fourth, sorry. Which one?
The first.
So yeah, the fourth and the second. So B and D are out. I agree with you. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, my question was, yeah, is it possible to just use approach of approximation because you spend time when you calculate average anyway. So
yeah, I agree, but here I would say no because of the design of this specific question. Because 2 and 3 are very close. So you can make a mistake if you round things up too much.
Okay, we need to understand the difference between average and after that gradate our answers according to the system.
And also, frankly speaking, calculating the averages is not that difficult. Here at least, I think. So you won't spend too much time on this calculation. That would work. Maybe skipping something more difficult would make sense. But here it would make sense to do the calculations straight away, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
All right, let's move on to what? Let's move on to question 14. Question 14. Well, question 14, Pavel got it right, Grigory got it right, Mary. Pavel, where is Pavel? Pavel not here, Anton. Okay, Pavel not here. Okay, Grigory, can you please explain question 14?
Sure, I'll try to the best of my ability if I could recall how I did it then. So which of the following values is the closest estimate of the percentage decrease in cumulative EBIT impact between base case and down case scenario? So if I have my papers with me here. Actually, yeah, so what I did is I remember that in the exhibit it says at the bottom, it says to account for possible risks, the team develops a downside case as well. So we're looking at the downside case and it says that the market growth will be 30% lower, EBIT impact procurement 2.0 will be also 30% lower, and EBIT impact of marketing 2.0 will be 15% lower. So we pretty much just deduct 30%, 30% and 15% from market growth, which is 30% off 91.2, 30% off procurement 2.0, which is 30% off 123, and 30% off marketing 2.0, 117, which brings us and then we calculate the new total. So okay, so the first total 91.2 plus 123 plus 117 is like 330 or something like that, and then the new total in the down case scenario is what is it? It's like around 250 or something. So then we hold on, how did I do it? And then yeah, okay, and then so 1,100 and actually maybe can I write here?
Okay, yeah, you can. Okay.
Right. So I if you guys can still follow what I'm saying, so this total minus minus the down case scenario total. If we deduct all the percentages here, is it working or not? Yeah, okay. So this one is 250. So 1,135 minus 250, and then it's 885 over 1,135. That brings us to like roughly 2.2 over 3. And then actually, I don't know if this is the one I used. I don't recall how exactly I did it.
Apologize. What is 250? How do you?
Yeah, actually, if you can erase all of that, Victor. Yeah. Trying to recall. I'm trying to remember the way I did it. And right now having a little bit difficulty.
Well, I would say that your overall approach is correct. So you took these sums here, you summed up these guys,
right?
But then you changed. You applied the change to here, minus 30. You said.
Yes.
Minus 30%, and minus 15, and then you calculated the result. And then you calculated the change, the new number versus the old number. That's the correct approach, but there is a quicker approach here, which I would like to share with you right now. And this approach again goes back to testing options. And the logic that I would like to explain to you is something which is in programming, is called binary search. Binary search is when you try to find a number in an ordered set, and you basically always consider the middle of the ranges. And then if you see that the number is somewhere in the left hand side, you go deeper into the left hand side. If the number is hiding somewhere in the right hand side, you go and explore the right hand side more. I think from my explanation it sounds a bit weird, but I would be more specific in a second. First thing, and I'm going to talk about the absolute value, so I'm not going to say minus 15, I'm going to say 15. Obviously, the change will be something between 15 and 30, right? Because the smallest change is 15, and the biggest change is 30, right? Tell me if it's not clear to everyone. Yeah, we're talking about the down case scenario. Yep. The down case versus the base case. So the change in the down case versus base case is somewhere here, somewhere. But well, you can tell me, well, this is Captain Obvious because we already know it from the answer options, right? Answer from 17 to 28. So your logic, Victor, doesn't really help so far. And I agree with you. But this logic can be extended further. And this is the good point about this logic. You can say, okay, we have this range starting from 15 to 30. But nothing prevents us from considering a smaller range. Or basically two ranges. From 15 to 22.5. And 22.5 is the middle of the range. From 15 to 30. And then the second range, the right hand side. From 22.5 to 30. And now, by looking at the data, we can say where the change of the desired result is lying. Is it lying in the left-hand side or is it lying in the right-hand side? The change the result we're looking for is lying in the right hand side. So it's here because observe that a bigger number overall, which is 91 plus 123, decreased by 30%, whereas a smaller number, 117, decreased by 15%. So the resulting decrease should be close to 30 than it is to 15. And mathematically speaking, close to 30 means that we are in this segment rather than in this segment. So we cross out.
Sorry, Victor,
yes. Go ahead.
Victor, when you were just talking about the bigger number decreases by 30 and the smaller decreases by 15, and by bigger number, do you mean the cumulatively 91 and 123? Yes. Okay, yeah, the sum of these. All yes. Right, or is it the sum of these two numbers counts as a bigger number, or is yes. that the amount of numbers, or is that the amount of numbers that totally decrease by 30? So like there are two numbers that decrease by 30 and just one number decreased by 15.
No. It's not the quantity of numbers. That's the total size. So 91 plus 123 is bigger than 117. So you can look at it this way. There are two magnets. One magnet on the left, which is 117, and another magnet on the right, which is 91 plus 123. And obviously the right magnet is stronger than the left magnet. So the result, the middle, will, yep.
Sorry to interrupt, so does it mean that, like, would this approach work if we didn't have a uniform 30 between two numbers, and what if it was like 30, 20, and 10? You know, then how would you approach
that would be more difficult. In this case, you would still try to use this approach. For example, say something, well, growing faster than 20% versus growing slower than 20%. But that would be, again, a case-by-case basis. I would be careful with that. And maybe in this case, this approach wouldn't work. Maybe you should do something else. This is always ad hoc. So I think I'm more talking about this specific situation rather than 20. But I'll show that this question is solved by weighted averages. And then weighted average would also work, but that's a different approach that I will share with you once I finish this one. So you can observe that the range where the answer is lying is this one rather than this one. And this is helpful already because we can cross out A and we can cross out B. We are only uncertain about C and D, whether it's C or D. But the good thing is that now we know how to apply this logic, and we can apply pretty much same logic in splitting this second range into something else. And we can ask ourselves whether the resulting number is closer to the left-hand side, to the 22.5, or whether it's closer to 30. And you can observe, again, that while 117 is smaller than 91 plus 123, it's still not negligible. It's still quite a big number. That means we cannot be too close to 30. We would be close to 30 if this were not 117, but for example 17, if that was a small number. But this is not a small number at all. This is roughly 1/3 of the overall change. 1/3, and this is 2/3. So we cannot be too close to 30. So we cannot lie, we cannot be 28. We cannot lie in the right hand side here. So the answer should be probably C, which is close to 30 but not too close to 30.
So how would you approach this? Like, how exactly do you determine, you know, the 17 to 100? Like, where do you get the sense from? Like, how do you sense that could be close or could be not be close? Where's that threshold?
Well, I'm trying to understand how big the numbers are. So what I'm considering here, A which is 91 plus 123 on the one side, and then 117 on the other side. I understand that if we're talking about 28%, 28% is pretty close to 30. That means that the magnet, so to speak, referring to 30, this magnet, magnet A, should be much bigger than the remaining magnet, which drives us away from 30 to 15. But I see that the numbers here are still pretty close. So 91 plus 123 is not 10 times as much as 117. That's actually just twice as big. So that means we cannot be too close to 30. So that means we cannot say that 28, which is very close to 30, is enough. We should be said something about 25%. I think that comes from experience as well. Yeah,
it's an interesting approach. If you could maybe perhaps, I don't know, additional exercises or maybe explain this approach. It's interesting, and it definitely comes from experience.
I would call this
a couple of things on that, a couple examples of the practice.
Well, frankly speaking, I'm not sure that I can come up with specific exercises to test this one. I think GMAT would help, but you really need to pick questions from GMAT similar to this one. But I think integrated reasoning is somewhat similar. Integrated reasoning is somewhat similar.
Good. And I just wanted to add that I actually finally remembered how I solved it. So if it matters, I can still try to explain my approach.
Well, I think if you don't mind, I'd rather explain another shortcut here, a completely different approach. We could also speed things up a bit. And you can observe, and we almost arrived at this approach by taking the current one. You can observe that these guys here, these guys decrease by 30%, and they represent 2/3 of the overall result. And this guy, decreasing by 15%, represents 1/3 of the result. So the only thing we need to do now is take weighted average, which is 30 times 2/3 plus 15 times 1/3, which is the relative magnitude of these numbers. The relative magnitude coming from these numbers here. And then 2/3 times 30 is 20, and then 1/3 times 15 is 5. And so 20 plus 5 is 25. And this is the desired answer.
Oh, beautiful. This is a bit better.
Yeah, but this is something that takes a bit more time to understand. And this is something I came up with once I understood this binary search example, binary search approach that I shared with you previously.
Okay, but once again, the shortcut also would work only if we have values decreasing by the same amount of percentage, like 30, 30.
No,
this apply this to like.
Yeah, that would work. That would work even with 20 and 3 and stuff with different numbers. You just understand the weights. You would need to calculate the weights of these guys, 91, 123. If calculating the weights is easier than calculating the results in a straightforward fashion, then it would work. For example, if we had 1/3 which grows at 20%, 1/3 which grows at 30%, and then 1/3 which grows at 15%, then the result would be 1/3 times 20 plus 1/3 times 15 plus 1/3 times 30. Same thing. The only challenge here is come up with these 1/3. But in this question here, it's quite easy. In this question. But the key takeaway here is that, unfortunately, there's no one-size-fits-all solution that that I can share with you. Pretty much every solution is ad hoc, so you need to understand what's going on in the data and then try to figure out which solution is the quickest. And what I'm doing here is I'm just showing different approaches, how I would look at the data and how I would make sense out of it. Any questions? Let's move on then. Let's move on to question 15. 15 goes, well, 15 goes to Maria this time. Maria, please explain your approach to question 15. Maria, can you hear me? Maybe you didn't turn your microphone on.
Could you just page? No?
Say it again, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, just scrolling the page, yeah, and I can see it right now. So
okay,
it is question 15. Okay, great. Which of the following is a valid conclusion based on data presented in table 3? I go one by one. So the first one is assuming EBIT margins and revenue growth rates remain unchanged. Company 2C's operating income in 10 years will be smaller than company 3's operating income. Really, I just didn't verify the A because it seems a little bit time-consuming for me to calculate it, so I just remained it and moved to next on. If it will just, if I will be able to find a valid conclusion easier. So that was my approach. That is how I did it. So it is next. And next one is B. If Omega triples its revenue growth in retail in country C, its operating income will reach the level of company 3 in less than 3 years. Really, also, I didn't check it because of time issues. I was something of time constraints. Then I moved to question C. The difference between company 1's and Omega's operating results in retail in country C is 49 million of euro. Well, actually, I crossed it out because it was not correct. I just made a very simple calculation. The EBIT margin 10% of company 1 is of company 1's is 58 million. It is very easy to solve it, and the profit margin for Omega is minus 1%, and it is minus 9 million. So it is minus 9 plus 9 plus 58 does not gives us 49. It actually gives us 67, and that is why the option D is correct. And it is a valid conclusion, and that is why I just didn't check the options A and B.
Well, that's right. I agree with you, but here's a shortcut to B. First, you notice that Omega's EBIT margin is negative. So no matter how you increase the revenues at Omega, it will produce negative profits, so a loss. So that means it will never reach the level of company 3, which is profitable. So you don't need to do any calculations for B. A is a bit of a different thing. A is something you need to calculate, but this is where you can use the compound margin approach. But I think I would really advise you not to spend your time on A. That's true. It's doable, but it's pretty time consuming. So that's my point. Thanks, Maria. Questions, guys? Okay, no questions? Then let's move to question 16. And I think question 16 is something I would like to explain myself because it's a bit weird, but you'll see that it's straightforward, actually, once you know the trick. And the trick is called contribution margin. I'm trying to write things down. Sorry for my handwriting. Okay, contribution margin. I call it contrib M. And there is a video lecture on that, and I suggest you go watch it because there are quite a few examples, and also intuition is explained with some visual aids. So that should be easier to understand. But in a nutshell, contribution margin is actually the amount of money which from your revenue is translated into profits. Because some money is eaten, is consumed by variable costs. But not all the money, luckily. Because if all the money were consumed by variable costs, that would be a pretty bad business. So what is left out of revenue when you're taking care of variable costs goes into fulfilling your losses or increasing your revenues. So here the trick is to understand what this contribution margin is. First step. Second step, understand how much losses, how much money in losses we need to cover, and then third step, calculating the extra revenue we need to cover this loss based on the contribution margin. So let's do it right now. First thing, contribution margin. Contribution margin is nothing more than 1 minus share of variable costs. Share of variable costs, it's 80% of overall expenses, overall costs. But share of variable costs should be calculated not out of overall expenses, but out of revenue. But here the thing is that revenue is pretty close to costs. Costs are slightly bigger than revenues, but still they're pretty close. So we can say that the share of variable costs and revenues is almost 80%. Not exactly 80%, but almost 80%. And then 1 minus 80% is about 0.2, right? So this is our contribution margin. So if we make $10 in extra revenues, we make $2 in extra profit. And $8 go to costs. Then, we already know from the discussion above that the revenue is 900 and the the profit margin is -1. So the losses are -1% times 900 is 9 million. So this is how much money we need to cover with our extra revenue. We need an extra profit of 9 million. How do we produce extra profit of 9 million? By taking 9 million and dividing it over 0.2. And this is 9 times 5, which is 45 million. 45 million in revenue is the extra revenue we need to make in order to cover our losses. And 45 million out of 900 million is roughly 5%. I think you can notice that that's pretty straightforward. And this is our answer. So you see that the question is not that difficult once you know this contribution margin trick. And again, to understand it deeper, I suggest you go and watch the video on contribution margin. But now, maybe you have any questions, I'll be happy to provide deeper insights and deeper guidance if necessary. Please go ahead. All right, It seems like you don't have questions at this point. Okay, again, if any questions arise, I suggest you go check this theory piece on contribution margin. But for now, let's move to question 17 then. And question 17, okay, Anton, please explain your approach to question 17. Oh no, Anton is not here. Anton is not here. So sad. Valentin, I think you solved it too. Yes, you did. Please, Valentin, explain your approach.
Yes, I'll try to. Which of the following statement, if true, would be the strongest argument for discounting Omega's wholesale business in country C and selling its asset to a strategic buyer? Several large pharmaceutical distributors in country C are interested in buying Omega's wholesale business. Option A, the structural question tells us that we need to check all options because we are looking for the strongest argument.
Yes, that's right.
So option A looks like a possible argument, but it's more like based on a common sense and on the data above. Then subscale players in pharmaceutical wholesales in country C incur substantial costs per euro of revenue and cannot be profitable. Also looks like a good idea to think about the wholesale to a strategic buyer, because like other companies struggling to make a profit, of companies of smaller size struggling to make a profit. I'm sorry, in the country C market. So option B also looks as an option, and I choose it as the favorite one at the end of that. But
question to you: is Omega subscale?
We're subscale. I'm not sure I understand what it's.
Subscale means too small, not big enough. Scale is the size, the extent of something, and subscale means below scale, like submarine, something below water. Submarine, subscale.
Looks like.
How do you know that?
In terms of table 3, we don't know it, but it's definitely Omega a bit smaller than successful companies, but we don't know about is it subscale.
Well, actually we do. We know that it's below average. So its scale is below average. So that's what subscale is. Smaller than others, smaller than average. So B could be read as small players in pharmaceutical wholesale cannot be profitable. So, and the exhibit says that Omega is small. It is subscale. It is small.
Apologize. I missed this date actually. I just put my thoughts based on the previous table, but yeah, you're right. On this exhibit, it's clear.
And obviously, you want to get rid of a company that cannot be profitable. So B is obviously the best answer. But I suggest that we look through all the options because this is an if true question. So we need to choose the strongest argument. Maybe there's something stronger, even though I doubt that.
Then turning around Omega's wholesale operations in country C would require significant investment. So it doesn't reflect to the selling to a strategic buyer because it's an operation part of the business.
Well, I would say
itself, as I understand.
The fact that it would require significant investment is not relevant for discontinuing operations per se, because if you need significant investment, but this significant investment produces very good return on investment, then it might actually fit your goals, and that might actually be a positive thing rather than a negative thing. So from C, I wouldn't say that.
And no sense to. And yeah, it doesn't reflect to this merger and acquisition or what is selling to a strategic buyer. And even after the sale of its wholesale business in country C, Omega will continue to benefit from its strong network of partners. It's like a contradiction argument for selling to the strategic buyer. So it's not definitely bad.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a contradiction, but I would say it's a loser's prize. You get it if you already sold the company. Like, don't get too much disappointed. Here's what you get instead. It's not really an argument to get the loser's prize. You need to get something more than that. So D, well, it is kind of an argument, but it's a pretty weak argument. So I think I would say I would cross that out. So B is our answer.
Okay.
Yep. Thanks for our explanation, Valentin. Any questions here, guys? All right. Question eight.
Yeah, just
question,
a quick one.
Yes, please.
Could you start? I just wanted to once again ask about that subscale. If you could quickly repeat that point about subscale players from the option B. I missed that point when you were discussing the subscale players in pharmaceutical wholesale. The option B, you were mentioning something about subscale, but I missed that point. Could you just?
Sure. Well, subscale is actually small, not big enough. And we can see from the exhibit that it's indeed very small because it's smaller than average. It's, well, basically pretty close to the lower range, worst among competitors. So in terms of scale, it's worst. So that's obviously subscale, which is small. And B says that small player cannot be profitable. So that means Omega is a small player and a small player cannot be profitable. So Omega cannot be profitable. So that means Omega is not a good business in this situation.
Got it. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. All right, question 18 now goes to whom? Question 18 goes to Tashi. Tasha, please explain question 18.
Sure. So, which of the following statements, if true, would best address the CEO's concern regarding selling Omega's wholesale business in country C? And then first, what we need to do is look at what CEO is saying. So if we just go a little bit up, the CEO of Omega was unhappy to learn that the company would have to divest its wholesale business in country C. He feared that smaller Omega would receive a lower market valuation and become an easy target for a wholesale takeover. He asked the team to analyze other pharmaceutical markets in Europe, which Omega could enter in the next 6 years to recoup the loss of country C. Okay, so which one would best address CEO's concerns? So A, when companies divest unprofitable business units, their stock prices increase. So this is actually the correct answer. And why? Because if we divest unprofitable business units, so this means that the rest that is still within our company is more profitable. And we said before that stock price, so profitability is a driver of stock price. So this means that if we divest, then our stock price should increase.
Yeah, that's right, and that would also alleviate the concerns of the CEO, or address the concerns of the CEO, because addressing is, well, that might be a weird word, because you might think that this is summarizing, which is not true. To address means to start, to solve, to tackle. So, which of the options would best tackle CEO's concerns? And A is definitely a good option, because it says, well, CEO, Mr. CEO, please don't worry. You won't get consumed by this corporate trader, because your price will increase, because you get rid of some useless stuff. So A is actually a good option. But let's.
This is really good point, Victor, that you said this to address. It's actually to tackle. It's not the same question then which option best summarizes CEO.
That's right.
That's it, right? So this is really important information.
That's right, because a good summary, I think, would be D. The more business units a company has, the harder it is to take the company over. This is what the CEO is concerned about, exactly. But that would be the wrong answer, because that would explain the problem, but not start to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's look at B.
So B, the corporate trader is willing to buy Omega's wholesale business in country C. Yeah. So, I mean, this is true, but I mean, it's nothing to tackle the problem. I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't really address that.
That's right.
And then C, Omega's wholesale business in country C can be sold for a good price. This is not really, I would rather expect.
Yeah, that's right. That would not alleviate the problem.
Yeah, exactly, yes. And D, you explained that D is just summarizing the problem, but it's not tackling it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you, Tasha. We conquered these questions. Any questions, guys? Not yet. Okay, let's move to question 19. 19, well, 19 was quite difficult, actually. Maria, please explain your approach to question 19.
Okay, so practically the question 19. So which of the following statements can you conclude from the data in Exhibit 4? So Exhibit 4, it's really about analyzing the graph. Yes, and so I started just one by one and analyze them. By so A, from 3 years ago, this year, more countries had negative market growth rates than positive market growth rates. So actually, I just calculated negative market growth rates, positive. So I just calculated the number of arrows for each version. And for identifying the number of arrows, it is obvious that option A is not correct.
Agree.
Then 3 years ago, the size of the size of country 7's pharmaceutical market was less than 25 billion euro. In case you could have lift a bit up because country C is situated up on the graph. Yes, so here it goes. Well, actually, the country B in the terms of billions was not that option. In case you could just a little bit down, I will explain. It was about the words detailing. If you could scroll down yes, was less than 25 billion euros. So from here we can point is situated between 25 and 30. The point for country A. Yes, so it is just like it is incorrect. The combined size of the three largest pharmaceutical markets in the next 6 years will be 100 billion euro. So it is, you can move upwards and say, okay, for the largest size, we have like country 8, yes, then country 6 and country 7. Well, practically it is there around like 100, but I was not sure that it is the exact number we can have with the graph. That is why I moved to option D. And the option D states that it is, could you please just go down a little bit for me to read the option D? So the pharmaceutical market growth in 400 in Exhibit 4 will slow down in the next 6 years compared to the previous 2 years. Yes, you can also count just the number of arrows who are opposite and that will be the right option. That is why I just choose option D.
Yep, I agree. I think you're right. Thank you, Maria. That's it. Not much to add. Any questions here? Maybe comments, anything?
Can you please explain what arrows you worked with in option D?
Yeah, for sure. So it means that if you read option D, the pharmaceutical market growth in 4 countries in Exhibit 4 will slow down in the next 6 years compared to the previous 3 years. So it means that the arrows should be like vice versa, so from right to the left, and this is what you have in the number of arrows. Yes, so country 8, then country, I suppose, 9 and 10, and the last one is country 11. So all the arrows, they are opposite. So that's all. You just calculate the arrows, otherwise not from right to left.
Yeah, from right to left. And this is country 8, country 11, country 9, and country 10. All other countries point from left to right, which is not what we need. But there are the 4 countries that we were looking for.
Yes.
By the way, the interesting fact is that this exhibit is real. This is a real exhibit from a real engagement, but I just sanitized it a bit, so it removed sensitive information. Otherwise, that's pretty much what the client saw. So it's not that I made this weird exhibit just to make life more difficult for you. No, this is a pretty real exhibit. The point is that this exhibit was for a private equity client. A private equity guys are usually pretty hardcore and pretty knowledgeable about exhibits and stuff. So showing a simple, straightforward exhibit to them would be like pissing them off. They would think that you're wasting their time. They really enjoy something more complicated, something more detailed. So that's why this exhibit makes sense to them rather than something simple. But of course, to some simple corporate client, that would really not work because that would be just too difficult to read. So you need to consider the attitudes and the interests of your clients in all situations, including this one. So kind of some fun fact. Any questions? No. All right, let's move on. All right, we're almost there. Question 20. Pine Tree Insurance. Anton and Valentin. Anton, not here now. Valentin, please take the lead on question 20.
Yeah, we will try to. So, based on the opinion of the head of Pine Tree Insurance, which of the following statement is a valid conclusion? So we have to go to abstract about head of the second one. The head of Pine Tree Insurance asked McKinsey team to investigate opportunities for the company in the individual health insurance market in different states in an effort to diversify its business exposure and grow profitability. Our shareholders are not happy with our performance in the last 2 years, and we need to do something about it, he adds. So we have to check options. The head of Pine Tree Insurance believes that individuals' health insurance will be a faster growing market in US than auto, home, and motorcycle. He states nothing about it, and we have no comparison between different types of insurance, like auto, home, motorcycle, and others. So option A doesn't work. Option B, the head of Pine Tree Insurance believes that the shareholders are not happy with the company and the current focus on the property insurance and looks for diversification opportunities. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, he do not tell nothing about other focuses.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So first part is true that shareholders are not happy, but nothing to support second part. Option C. So not consider option B. Option C. The head of Pine Tree Insurance wants to enter the individual health insurance market to grow profits while maintaining decent margins and thus raise shareholders' confidence. Again, it's more like based on a common sense and based on the data, and nothing to support that he wants to enter the individual health insurance market. And yeah, nothing to support. Actually, I didn't find anything to support. Let's be clear with
okay.
Statements. And option D, that head of Pine Tree wants to increase the company profits per dollar of revenue and believes individual health insurance might be the right opportunity, which is more accurate state that first statement, yes, he wants to increase profits as per dollar or just profit, let's say, because his shareholders is unhappy with the performance. And yes, the paragraph number 2 also tell us that investigation opportunities in the health insurance market might be an option. So I believe that option D is the best one.
Yep, I agree with you. Thank you, Valentin. Questions?
Thank you.
All right, question 21. Question 21 goes to whom? To Grigory. You were the only one who did it right. Please explain.
Well, I hope, well, I did solve it, but I hope I didn't guess and my approach was correct. Well, and, you know, so if you could scroll up a little bit. Excellent, yes. So the way I understood this is that the question is about the first two market players, right? It says which of the following figure, something like about like between the states with the first and second largest share. So as I understood, this was the first one and this was the second one. Then in this graph,
be careful here. Be careful because we are talking about cumulative figures.
Right. Yeah. That I remember. So the way I looked at it was that the first ones was share 11%, I would say. And
okay.
The second share was like 19 or something. You know, it looked like it. So 11% of 3 billion is roughly like 330 million, you know, and 8%. So like the difference between 11 and 19 is like 8. So 8% of 3 billion was like 200, I don't know, 40 or something like that billion. So and then I simply 330 minus 240, that brought me to 90. And you know, the closest thing to 90 in the answer was A. But and I hope it was a correct approach and us just guessing.
Well, there was a small mistake here that I'm gonna point out in a moment. So this is a cumulative expenditure, right? The cumulative expenditure means that the first value you pointed out correctly. This is 11, but the second is not 19. The second.
It's 8, right?
Yeah.
It's 8. That's what I. Yeah. That's why I said that the difference between the 19 and 11 is 8. That's Sorry, I missed.
Yeah. And then we need to understand the difference between the first and the second. And the difference is 11 minus 8 equals 3.
Ah.
And okay. Now we take 3%.
That is easier.
Yeah. So you're actually taking the differences 2 times, which is kind of weird, but the right thing in this exercise. And then you take 3% out of 3,000 billion, 3 trillion, and that would be around 100 billion, right? So you go look at the options and you look for something which is close to 100 billion, and the closest option to 100 billion is 97.5 billion, option A, which is the right answer. That's it.
Okay.
So I think you were close, Grigory, but not quite there. Not quite there yet.
Yeah. So there was still some guessing, right? Whereas your approach is solid, I think.
Yeah. But being lucky sometimes is also important. Questions, guys. Questions. No questions? Okay, let's look at question. Okay, Tasha, please take question 22.
Yes. So, 22, which of the following statements is false based on information the team learned from the health insurance expert? So again, we look into the health insurance expert, which is a little bit up in this text. Following the expert's advice, the team has collected some data. Oh, wait, is this expert? So the team calls a leading McKinsey insurance expert. She explains how the individual health insurance market works in the US. Health insurance companies, also called providers, collect recurring monthly fees for premiums from customers and reimburse their medical expenses. Each state has its own regulations, so providers have to design different insurance plans for different states. So this is the statement that we need to have in mind. And then when we go step by step, so we go, if insurance plan A is sold in Minnesota to college students, it must be available at the same price to seniors with disabilities. This is actually in line what expert says, because I think it says that each state has its own regulations. So if it's in the same state, then it should be valid for like different customer segments. So this one is not false. And then B, when we look into providers of individual health insurance must charge different insurance premiums in different states. This must is a little bit like too strong word for me, because it doesn't mean they must. They might, but not must, because the regulations between states are different, but this doesn't mean that they're all
That's right. We don't actually know if they have to charge different price premiums. They have to design different different policies. That's right. But do they have to charge different prices? We don't know.
Yes, exactly, but different policies. Okay. Then we looked into C, which is correct. US citizens receiving federal subsidies can choose to spend them on immediate medical needs rather than insurance. So this is false. I mean, it doesn't really connect that much with what experts said.
Oh, that's right, because there's this piece of information, right? Federal subsidies, financial support offered by the U.S. government to individuals earning below a certain minimum threshold so that they could buy health insurance. So there's a specific goal, specific expense that they can put this money to. They cannot spend money on something else. They need to spend on a very specific thing. They're not allowed to spend it on medical needs. So C is false. And this is actually what we're looking for.
Exactly.
And then D, but D is something we don't know. We don't know whether this threshold is the same or not. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's different. Well, no information so far. No information.
Yes, it's unproven.
So C is the right answer. Do you have any questions, guys?
Yes, please. Can you please remind what is supporting the data in option A? How we know what is connection in between seniors and the disability students?
Let's look at that. That's the first bullet. Guaranteed issue requirement. Health insurance plans must be available to all customers at the same price premium, regardless of the customer's health status. Does it make sense?
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
More or less, yes. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Here's a bit of math, guys. I think you missed it. Here it comes. And who will tackle it? Maria, why don't you tackle question 23, please?
Yeah, for sure. Just, I'm making my dog out of sofa. Yeah, could you just please scroll down to question number 23?
Sure.
So,
Sure.
and a little bit down because I don't see it, and on my Mac, I'm not sure how to open it. Yes, 23, but a little bit down because I have my notes, but I don't see the question actual. Okay, yeah. So based on Exhibit 2, what is the average monthly premium Pine Tree Insurance would have to charge to break even on medical costs? So actually we have like 4 numbers here, and what is needed to do is to see to multiply. You have two graphs upside, and in order to come to the correct answer, you need to multiply the portion of from the first graph to the corresponding medical spending by the right graph.
That's right. That's right.
And what I did it because it was the 23rd question, I was writing out of time practically at that time, and really I didn't do the exact multiplication. I just tried somehow to estimate what will be, just because the gap between, and you can just estimate it on average. So it thinks that, okay, so practically 40% will have less than 1,000. Yeah. Like the 10%, and could you please, Victor, just a little bit up, because if I'm not mistaken, on the right graph, it is an annual.
Yep, that's right. That's
an
right.
annual cost. It is. Yeah. So you should first of all, what I did, I divided each of the annual medical costs by 12, approximately. Frankly speaking, I just divided them by 10 and remembered in my mind that a little bit division will be smaller. So if you divided it by 10, yes, if you divided it by 10, you can just then simply figure all the points. So divided by 10, it means that you have like $90 per month per A. Then you have like 100, approximately $200 per B, and then you make all the exact calculations, and really you see that the average monthly premium will be somehow, I calculated, is less than 1,000. So that is why my answer was A. I know that it should be a little bit upper, but still, as 3.5 is a huge diversion from 1.0, I made it to A, and that's all. I didn't perform the exact calculation, really.
That's good because you saved time, and the idea is pretty same as you explained. What we need to do is weigh actually the numbers in A, B, C, and D by the shares. But then we also need to remember that we're talking about annual costs. And then there is the monthly premium. So we need to multiply this thing by 12. So these things multiplied by 12
should end up somewhere to be the average of these guys, weighted average. But the problem is that, observe, everything except for A is just too big. Then B times 12 is about 40k, which is almost here. But the average obviously should be somewhere here. Somewhere here, I don't know. But not at 40. And C is even more. And D is even more. So even taking into account the order of magnitude, you understand that the only possible option is A. You don't really need to calculate much here. You see that everything else is just too big. And then the answer is A. Thank you, Maria. Questions, guys? Okay, so that one is clear. Question 24. Question 24. Who did it? Tasha, you did question 24. Please explain your logic.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So 24. Assuming that medical costs and shares of segments A and B in Exhibit 2 remain the same, while shares of C and D change, what is the minimum share of segment C for Pine Tree Insurance to break even on medical costs with monthly premium not exceeding 1,500? So what I did is then again just calculate A and B shares, so 0.4 times 0.9 is around 0.36.
That's correct, because they don't change, right? C and D change, but A and B don't change. Yeah, so we can get rid of them. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And then 0.1 times 19.3 is around 1.90. And then I put X for C and D, then 0.5 minus X. So for C would be then X times 5.7 equals 5.7X, of course. And then for D would be then 0.5 minus X times 43.1, right? And then you just calculate everything, you try to find the X. So the X would be then, you would, when you put this equation together, you get 6 equals around 37X, and then X is around 1/6. So 6 over 37 is kind of 6 over 36. It's 1/6 is around 15%. So C.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. What I'm doing here, I'm just writing the expression so that that everyone else sees what you're talking about. Basically, I'm writing down what you just said. So 5. This is 5. Okay, 5.7 times X.
Yes.
Plus yeah, so basically that's the expression, and then you just solve it for X, and you end up with option C. You're right.
Correct, yes.
Sorry, what's the last digit?
It's 43.1.
43.1.
Gotcha. And right before that, it's in parentheses 0.5 minus X, right?
Exactly.
And we are adding 43.1, right? Or are we multiplying 0.5 minus X by 41? By 43.
Yeah, we're multiplying. We're basically doing the same thing as we did in the previous exercise. we're calculating the averages, the weighted averages. The only difference though is that now the weights are unknown, but the overall result is known. So we substitute the known weights with x's, and then the result with 1.5 k times 12. But otherwise the logic is the same. It's about calculating the weighted average.
Okay, yeah, cool.
All right. Thank you, Tashi. That works indeed. Now, question 25, 26. Let's look at those. 25. Maria, please guide us through question 25.
Okay. So 25, which of the following statements, if true, would best support an argument against introducing annual deductibles in individual health insurance plans? So to best answer this question, we should observe that an annual deductible is a fixed dollar amount the customers pay for covered services each year before the insurance provider starts reimbursing medical expenses. And now, having that information, I just went through argument by argument and cross whatever is needed. So, option A, an annual deductible would turn away certain customer segments whose annual medical costs are lower than or slightly exceed the deductible. Practically, I think that it was one of the supporting argument against, because you lose the customers because it is just from an ordinary mind what for to pay for medical insurance if then you would pay for some expenses on your own. So it means that
right, but you're not just losing some customers, because, for example, losing old and unhealthy would be a good thing for a business, even though it sounds weird. But that would be a good thing for the business. But losing young and healthy would be a very bad thing for the business because they're profitable. And A actually suggests that we will be losing profitable customers. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
We'll be losing profitable customers.
Okay, so really, I like the A. Then I move to B. An annual deductible would encourage customer not to incur medical costs because they would share in some of the expenses.
That's not bad for the business, actually. If they buy the insurance but don't spend money on medical expenses, that's actually good for us because we won't need to reimburse it.
But, well, my logic was a little bit different. I would say that some of the customers, that it is not that true, because in case you buy the service, usually you would like to benefit from all, so it is less profitable than option A. So that is why the option A was still the best approach for me.
Why is it less profitable? If we get money from the customers, but customers don't require us to reimburse their expenses, that's actually a good thing.
Yeah, but could you please give me a hint here, because really I just don't remember the exact logic for the option B.
Now, the point is that we're trying to find an argument against this change. But B says that if we propose this change, then we will have customers who pay us for insurance, but at the same time who don't require reimbursement of medical costs. So that sounds like a great plan for us. We would be happy to have that.
Yeah, but yes, as we are found against, it is not correct option.
That's right.
So the CEO of Pine Tree Insurance have never seen a successful introduction of an annual deductible in health insurance, and fears a wrong move will tarnish their brand. Well, I don't think that it is a really a strong argument, because even if it's true, you can find out why there were no successful introduction, and maybe you could try of
That's right.
making something different and introduce and make something well. And so it is just that is why it is not right. Okay, and a similar strategy was attempted by Pine Tree Insurance and Home Insurance recently, and resulted in a 7% decline in premiums collected and a 3% decline in profits. Well, actually, I think it is. It might be also a good plan, but still, in case it is a 7 decline in premiums and a 3 decline in profits, it is. It means that you have like the profit margin is increasing, and I don't think it is a.
Yeah, but here the issue is different here. We don't know whether this information is relevant at all. Is home insurance relevant to health insurance? We don't know. Most likely not. But we don't know.
So that is why the option A is the best.
Yeah, exactly. D is just an irrelevant benchmark. Most likely irrelevant.
I had the other logic that in case you really, this sounds that like increasing a margin, and increasing a margin is sometimes might be an idea of firm, and but it is not that strong argument against. So I just had another logic. I now understand that it was incorrect, but still it was not that obvious as opposed to option A.
Yeah, okay.
So that is why I've chosen option A.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions, guys?
No question. I just a quick comment. I thought that the B is wrong because it means that people would not get sick, and this is not something in control necessarily. But just a little comment why I thought the B is wrong.
I see, but we need to assume that B is true. So even if it sounds weird, we need to assume that it is true. And there is a situation where it would be true. People would get sick, but they would try not to spend money, or rather, even if they spend money, they won't ask for reimbursement because they would think, okay, I don't want to run out of my deductible. I don't want to pay myself. I'd rather not go to the doctor at all, even if I get sick, just to save money.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, now here comes question 26. And what I would like to suggest we do right now is you guys take your pens and try to answer it right now. I would just like to highlight the important thing here. This is the important thing that actually matters in this question. Think about it and please take 2 minutes to mark your answers, your updated answers to this question, and then we'll discuss. All right, guys. I see your answers, which is good. And the right answer is D, actually. You're right. And the key idea is that all the four options actually provide some good pieces of information. But only D is something that we already have. Because we have customer segments and corresponding medical costs. And D is actually the same thing. Whereas A, B, and C is something else. If there were no words like in addition to something, then we won't be able to choose the answer because all the four options would be good pieces of information that you would like to know. But because we have already something, we don't really need this redundant, very similar information. So that's why D is least helpful and D is the right answer. That's it. And I see that you marked D correctly. Do you have any questions or comments or observations about this question, guys?
It's just a trick question that the key is the beginning condition.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, usually these kind of questions, you would not pay attention to, and I mean,
Yeah.
like, initially I answered it wrong initially, but after taking a look at it again, this condition at the beginning is actually the key.
Yeah, you're right, Grigory. That's exactly it. That's why you need to be very careful and look for details anywhere in the question. So, even reading the text is not that important, but reading the question is paramount. You can find some crucial information anywhere, even at the beginning of the question or at the very end of the question, anywhere. So, that's just another another opportunity for me to remind you of how important attention to detail, especially in questions and options is. Well, okay, all right, guys. I really apologize for this long session. I think you really got tired, and it's difficult to keep attention for 3 hours. But I would also like to thank you because we managed to conquer this 26 questions, and I hope you have a better understanding of what's going on in this test right now. And next time, it will be easier for you to tackle all these kinds of things. Is there anything you would like to ask regarding the test now? All right. Well, okay. In this case, I suggest we call it a day. Yeah. Yes, please. Question.
Victor.
Go ahead.
It is not a question. It is like, could you please also provide answers for this test?
Yes.
Because really I'm quite good in reading, but not in listening. So
yeah, definitely. That's why I have the answers and the explanations in writing as well as in speaking. Speaking is good practice, but writing is also good for understanding. Then yeah, definitely I'm gonna share it with you right once we finish this discussion.
Thank you.
And it will be posted in solutions, right? Solutions.
Yeah, exactly. Just check it in, well, 5 minutes. Once we finish, I'm going to open the access to you right away.
And how soon the video will be available? Like always, like about Tuesday or something like that?
I guess so. I think I'm going to render it tomorrow, and then we're going to upload it on Tuesday, I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, thank you.
All right. In this case, thank you guys. Look forward to seeing you next weekend actually, and to chat with you in Telegram once you have any questions. Thanks for the session tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.